the beginning of the 2024-25 season, in 8 Premier League matches, Antony had failed to produce a single goal contribution. Even more, in the Europa League, he didn't make a single goal contribution in 4 matches. His only contribution in a total of 14 appearances for Man United came in a single goal during an EFL Cup match against Barnsley. Mind you, this was shortly after the worst season Antony had ever experienced so far in his time with Man United. Last season, Antony wouldn't even make a single goal contribution in the Premier League all the way up until the 31st match day. He wouldn't even score his first goal until nearly the end of the season, when he did it in the 35th match day against 19th place Burnley. The club paid an insane €95 million for him, the 11th most expensive Premier League player in history. Though admittedly, the only moment he looked anything even remotely worth that price was in a pretty epic performance against Liverpool in the FA Cup quarter-final, where he would score an equalizing goal, which eventually led to Man United's FA Cup title. But aside from that, Antony basically became the joke of the footballing community. Slowly, the world would turn Antony into a meme, saying things like 365 days in 1 year, or even calling him the GOAT. And of course, the memes were all lighthearted. Everyone loves Antony and how much entertainment he brings to the pitch. But at the professional level, it looked like he was completely destroying his career. Surely, there was no way that any other club would ever try and sign him again. But just when it looked like he hit rock bottom, just when it looked like there was no other way up, Antony would prove everyone wrong. Within the span of a few weeks, Antony would transform into, and I can't believe that I'm actually saying this, one of the most informed players on the planet. But honestly, were there ever even any doubters? Antony is the GOAT after all. More goals and assists in 2025 than R9, Ronaldinho, and Zidane put together. Okay, but seriously, what changed? How did Antony go from being the most ridiculed player in football to someone that's quite literally helping his historically average club secure a potential Champions League spot next season? Let's back up a bit for context. During the January transfer window, Manchester United, for very obvious reasons, decided to let Antony go on loan to Real Betis, where ironically he's currently playing under former Man City boss Manuel Pellegrini. And when he finally signed for Betis, there were these jokes going around about how Antony was supposedly going to show big players in La Liga who the real boss was. And it was pretty funny at the time. But who would have thought that the meme was actually going to come to life? Because what's crazy is that in his first 3 La Liga matches, he's won 3 Man of the Match awards. And at the making of this video, since joining La Liga, Antony has twice as many goal contributions as Vinny Jr. That is actually crazy. Now there's also something going around, and people on the internet are calling this the Antony effect, as his mere presence in his new club has seen them rise up in the La Liga table, completely reinvigorating the club and suddenly bringing them incredible form. It's like Antony is breathing new life into his club, because prior to his signing, Real Betis were sitting 12th on the league table. Now, since the arrival of Antony, Real Betis is sitting at 6th in the league, having a perfect record of 5 wins in their last 5 matches, the only other club in La Liga besides Barcelona in such great form. In fact, since Antony joined, Real Betis has only lost a single match. Antony just might be, quite literally and seriously, the most valuable player in La Liga for the last 2 months. Heck, they might even make it to the Champions League or Europa League by the end of the season, considering that the only thing separating them from 5th place Villarreal is a single goal difference. But seriously, what changed? How did this Premier League outcast turn into a beast in La Liga? Has Antony actually matured as a player, or was Manchester United just cursed? Well, back when he was still dropping stinkers at United, some of his flaws as a winger in the Premier League included his tendency to slow down the game and try to attempt stationary dribbles, rarely trying to use his pace efficiently to beat defenders. Obviously, this made his dribbling predictable and his tricks easy to defend against. This begs the question, is he doing anything different at Betis? Well, he certainly hasn't attempted his trademark ball spin or any exaggerated skills like this in Spain. But you could say that he's not trying to be so flashy anymore. Instead, Antony is simply trying to be more productive, like moving the ball and keeping it simple. But other than that small but significant change, there's not really much Antony has adjusted about his game. He's still the same winger we know who highly favors his natural left foot. Of course, this occasionally used to be a problem at United, since that fraction of a second he took to switch the ball to his other foot gave defenders enough time to bounce on him. But interestingly, in his goal against Celta Vigo in February, he's seen to bring the ball back into his left foot before shooting. And as for his unrelenting desire to cut in and take the shot or give the assist, it's also still been a recurring theme at Betis. In fact, that's exactly how he gave his assist for Isco to score their first goal in a win against Getafe. He does this exact same cutting in maneuver to give the pass that he usually does. So yeah, Antony is basically doing the same things he's been doing all his career. The only difference is, for whatever reason, for Real Betis, he just looks a lot more calm and confident. So what's with this sudden change? Well, I've kind of come to the conclusion that Antony's success in Spain has little or nothing to do with his quality on the pitch, or particularly with Manuel Pellegrini's tactics. Because when the GOAT himself was asked what the reason was for his improved form, he didn't say that the Premier League was particularly difficult or anything, but he simply said that the sunnier climate in Spain was a major factor, since he's not that big a fan of winter or the typical gloomy weather in the UK in general. Antony says he's overall happier in the city of Seville, much more than he was at Manchester. And to be fair, this is no new phenomenon in football, especially when it comes to South American players. For example, Brazilian legends like Neymar, R9, and Ronaldinho all avoided the Premier League due to what they thought was a boring atmosphere, food, and overall vibe of cities in England in general, especially when compared to what they're used to and what they prefer in Brazil or Spain. One case study is also Angel Di Maria, whose move to United in 2014 coincidentally turned out into disaster. His form would dip dramatically and he would move to another club. And we would find out later that his dislike of the Premier League had something to do with the English climate and the contrasting atmosphere of English cities. When you think about it from the club side, getting a sense of adaptation from a player and his family or entourage should be one of the key priorities before sealing a transfer. And that fact didn't once come up when Antony was being chased by Man United. Erik ten Hag wanted Antony so badly at United, but guess who ten Hag originally wanted to bring in? No other than another former player, Frankie de Jong. However, de Jong would let United know that he had no interest of joining them. Initially, he didn't mind leaving Barcelona for another club. He just didn't want to go to United. And one of his reasons, well, it was the English climate. But some of you might say, well, Antony played in the Netherlands. It isn't exactly warm and sunny. So hey, there is a chance that Antony might be capping. But who are we to question the GOAT when he's been playing this well? And the fact that Antony has basically been playing the same way that he played for Man United, aside from all the useless dribbling and showboating, it really does further support the idea that it was all a mental hurdle for our boy. However, Ruben Amorim theorized that the physicality of the Premier League has been a large reason as to why Antony failed to impress at Old Trafford. That the Premier League is more physical and fast-paced compared to other leagues. Sure, there is definitely some truth in that, and Antony isn't exactly the fastest or the strongest to deal with defenders like Virgil van Dijk or William Saliba. But if that's the reason, then it's also okay. Certain players just work better in different environments and a different structure. But another theory for this completely revived Antony is simply that there's just a fundamental problem with the club culture at Man United. Man United is simply cursed. Since the departure of Sir Alex Ferguson, the club has spent approximately £1.6 billion in the transfer market, and they have not come close, and it's just been one disappointing transfer after another, indicating that there's either something wrong in the club's philosophy, maybe their scouts are completely clueless, or hey, maybe they're just cursed. It also doesn't help that the club owners and management not only change all the time, but have also been a complete mess. These could all be factors contributing to why players fail at Man United, but start to succeed after leaving Old Trafford. Former United players like Scott McTominay or David De Gea are doing pretty well in Italy after having been rejected by their former club. Generally speaking, sometimes players just need a new environment to give them that spark. Mo Salah and Kevin De Bruyne, as far as we were concerned, were flops at Chelsea. Now, after moving on to other clubs and other systems, they've become some of the best players in Premier League history. And inversely to the Premier League, Martin Odegaard didn't really fit at Real Madrid or La Liga either, but a move to Arsenal seemed to be all he needed to start turning into a truly class player. A lot of players hit rock bottom at one point of their career, and for a footballer to bounce back when they're at their lowest, to me shows true strength. and such a player really earns my respect. So you really gotta give credit to Antony. He really does deserve his flowers for reviving his form. With the form he was in, our boy looked like he was about to be shipped to Saudi or back to the Brazilian league. But as fate would have it, the same player who was written off at United is now proving the entire world wrong. Maybe he wasn't the problem at all. Okay, aside from his spinning, that is. And maybe, just maybe, the right environment and the right mentality were all he needed. So, is Antony truly a flop? Is his current form now just fraudulent? Or is Manchester United just cursed and it's all their fault? Let me know what you think in the comments.